Hi guys, my name is Rena from Colorwork Crochet. In today's video, I'm going to be trying out a knitting book. A while back to, I guess, whenever you see this video, it's not that much of a while back for me, but I went to Joann's shopping their essentially liquidation sale, and I decided to pick up some books when I was there. So one book I decided to pick up is this knitting hats book, and I wanted to try using some yarn I have around my room, which is a hot mess right now, to essentially try out some of the patterns in this book and also just try my hand more at knitting. At this point, I am not good at knitting, but I've been wanting to try knitting a little bit more than I have essentially been now. I took a quick look at this book. It is essentially 30 knitting patterns that are all color work, and it uses a variety of different weights of yarn to create all of these color work. It's marketed as being pretty easy, but in this book, when I did my quick look through, has a variety of different knitting patterns that I could try out, and they're all using different weights of yarn. Some are using thinner yarn, some are using chunky yarn, so on and so forth. So in this video, I want to try 3 patterns in here. I want to try a chunky yarn pattern, a worsted weight pattern, and a DK baby weight pattern. Now, for reference, for my knitting, the only thing I've ever knitted is that chunky knit beanie pattern from Passionate Kelsey's YouTube channel. It's a very easy beanie, and I was able to figure out knitting in the round a lot easier. If anything, I find it a lot easier to knit in the round than I do knitting not in the round, essentially. And I was thinking, especially when I picked up this book, that if I only know how to knit in the round, a pattern book of just hats would actually work. And also, this will be my first introduction to knitted color work. I do crochet color work. I've made quite a few tapestry crochet pieces, but I have never done knitted color work. And frankly, I haven't done much knitting either way. So this will be interesting. Now for the chunky weight beanie patterns, I wanted to try using these. This is Premier Puzzle yarn, and this is Loops and Threads Charisma. Both of these are acrylic yarns, and I've had them lying around my room. I kind of want to use them up, and I think they would go really well in a knitted hat. I think the first pattern I'm going to start is with this, the chunky yarn. I also realized I wanted a whole set of interchangeable needles, so I ended up buying myself a set of interchangeable knitting needles. So I will be using these for the first time today, essentially. So this book has a whole lot of, how to read color charts, how to do gauges, how to, carry yarn in the round, as well as concept of yarn dominance when knitting color work, which I had seen videos of here and there, but I obviously have never knit color work. So this will be interesting. Now I think what I'm gonna do is just kind of jump into it, and if there's something I don't understand, I'll just go look it up. That seems to be what I've been doing for quite a while anyway. The first pattern I'm going to work on is this Swirl Power Chunky Knit Hat. I think this will be really interesting, and I think I will use the white yarn as my brim and then the Premier Puzzle green yarn as my swirl color. So let's work on that. When I first made my knitting video, I had stubbornly decided to use the cast on method that my grandma taught me. I think it's called the backwards loop cast on, but it's kind of considered an unconventional cast on method. And it's fine, If anything, I think it might be interesting for like if you want to increase rows by a lot, with my limited knitting knowledge. But doing that cast on leads to some really rough looking edges. And so I finally decided to try the long tail cast on after resisting it for so long. And yeah, there's a reason why people use it. And let's be real here, what did I expect? I probably should have been doing that from the get-go because one, it is easy, but two, the edges look so much cleaner. And I wish I had done that earlier, but here I am now. The first thing I'm gonna do is switch on to 9mm needles because that is what this pattern calls for, which I don't have. Actually, what's the gauge on this thing? 9mm. Oh, that's great. Oh, these are 8s. Okay, first rookie mistake. I don't have 9mm knitting needles. I actually just have 8mm knitting needles, and I realize that might be a problem. Hopefully it doesn't prove too much of a problem, but you know what? I'm probably just gonna donate this hat anyway because I don't know. We'll see how this works for me, but I just changed it out to 8mm knitting needles. We'll see if this works. This has an option for a child's hat or a adult hat. I think just looking at the amount of yarn I have, I might actually have enough for an adult hat. So let me do that. You know what? I think I'm just gonna make the child's hat because I didn't anticipate enough yarn. Whoops. Am I gonna be forced to use magic loop on this? Because I really hope not.
And the working yarn is coming from the back needle. Okay. I'm gonna pull the back needle long and I'm ready to go.
Slide the back needle out, bring it round to the front, then grab hold of your working yarn, and then we're going to make sure that nothing's twisted. So nothing's twisted there. Start knitting, pull that right out, the first stitch.
I think I just figured out how to do magic loop. And now that I think I did, I'm going to change out this cord because I think this cord is too short for magic loop. I'm just gonna start this over tomorrow. I think I'm good for today. Don't mind my messy setup, but I figured out magic loop. And I'm not done with the brim yet, but it's definitely in progress, and it definitely got a lot easier as I knitted more. So the one unfortunate thing about Colorwork, especially for me, is that I have to count the rows, and I ended up having to write in pencil on which row I'm at so that way I can perfectly follow along and not get lost, because counting is very difficult for me and I'm not very good at mentally keeping track. But I also kind of hate writing in books as well, but this is pencil. It's kind of a necessary evil for this, and I have a feeling I'm gonna have to do that for the rest of the hats I make. So I know I used the wrong needle size, but I don't think this hat's gonna fit. I finished it. It does look cool, but this hat's made for basically a newborn baby. So I think I'm better off giving this to my nephew. But this is my first Colorwork piece done. Here's the inside. A lot of floats. It was kind of hard getting the needles through. Maybe I'm a tight knitter, I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that I'm not used to magic loop. Who knows? But when I knitted the band seemed like it could, fit a kid at least. But I think my knitting got tighter and tighter as I kept going in the round and carrying these floats. So I guess that's my first hat done. I mean, it still looks really cool, but yeah, I think I just didn't anticipate how tight regular knit stitch would be versus this ribbing right here, because the ribbing is incredibly stretchy, but the actual knit part is very tight. But yeah, very first knit hat with Colorwork. Unfortunately, it didn't use as much yarn as I was hoping it would, so maybe I'll try making another chunky knit beanie with this yarn later. Okay, so I looked through this book multiple times and looked through my stash multiple times to try and find patterns that would work for my stash, because I was not buying new yarn for basically a little bit of yarn. I'm definitely going to be off gauge for all of these because all the yarn I want to use do not match the patterns that I want to make. So I was trying to find a pattern for basically this DK weight baby yarn that I had. And so, and for reference, it is Lion Brand Baby Soft. I have a bunch of this left from the first time I made a star blanket. And now I'm sitting here thinking, what am I gonna do with the rest of this yarn? So I'm gonna make a hat, a Colorwork hat. I think it'd be fun. So originally, the hat I was wanting to make that actually matched the yarn that I wanted to use, at least, was this heartstrings hat. Unfortunately, the yarn I have is only in those pastel baby colors, and I don't have any bold colors that will contrast. So I don't think this pattern would work, which is very unfortunate because it was the only pattern in here that called for DK weight yarn. And this is actually bringing me to the first criticism of this book, is that this book is meant for quick, easy color work, which yes, it is quick and easy. But a lot of the patterns in here use chunky weight yarn. And I guess for the sake of it being quick and easy, then yes, like the chunky weight yarn is quick and easy for color work, especially quick. I was hoping to find maybe more options using at least worsted weight yarn and maybe DK weight yarn. I understand it's not like advanced color work, but I was hoping for something. But that's whatever. That's the only criticism I have so far. Once I saw that the heartstrings hat did not work for my case, I had to look through more, and I decided eventually on the hopscotch pattern right here. I don't have bright contrasting colors, but I think a subtle color work would actually work for this. So I'm working on making the brim. The suggested yarn for this is actually a worsted weight yarn, but I'm using DK weight, and the suggested needles is a 7, and I'm just gonna keep using the 7. Now I casted this on. I'm already expecting that this is going to be smaller than the adult size, just because I'm using smaller yarn with the right needles, and also considering this, yeah, it's gonna be smaller. I'm really hoping that the next pattern I pick will actually match gauge for once, both yarn and needle, so that way I don't have to keep using magic loop, because I had to redo this thing like 3 times. Because even though I conceptually get magic loop, the setup is so difficult. It is crazy. If it weren't for the fact that my needles didn't fit on the shorter cables, I would not be doing this. And speaking of like not being comfortable with magic loop, I might try remaking this hat again, but using shorter needles and seeing how that turns out, because I'm more comfortable using these needles than I am using the magic loop method for the chunky yarn. And I'm curious if the hat will turn out as small using the shorter needles as it did, considering I have a little bit more control over the color carrying. So we'll see. That's a maybe.
And so I think as I move from my loosey-goosey, hang out around the house with the kids self into a more professional environment, I want to go for something more tailored.
Purple. All right, so I will do this purple, and then I will do the yellow, and then I will be back, and I am going to think about...
Update on the brim of this hat. This brim is taking literally forever. To be fair, I kind of dropped it for a couple weeks and then picked it back up again, but it is literally taking forever. And also my stitches on the side are not very pretty here either because I barely know how to do magic loop. So is it pretty? No, but it's hat and that's all that matters. Okay, I have my brim made. It took me literally forever to make this thing, so I am going to start the color work now. Okay, so little update on the color work of this hat. It's turning out quite nice. I have managed to figure out how to read the chart. Well, reading the chart has always been the easy part. It's more so actually doing knitted color work that's the hard part. But I managed to figure out how to do it, and I learned my lesson from last time with the floats. I need to give extra space for the floats and not be too tight with my tension there, because last time I think me not doing that made my work way too small. So I am intentionally like placing my finger in between the color changes as I go. And I think also this chart in particular says, oh, leave an extra long float for this color change. You can pick it up and knit the float and the stitch together in the subsequent row. So that's what I've been doing. It did take me a little bit of time to figure it out, but I did figure it out. I don't know, trial and error, right? But this is how far I've gotten on the color work. It looks a lot cooler on camera than it does in real life. I think in real life, it's a little bit, the color contrast is a little bit more subtle, but when I'm looking at the shot in the camera, it looks super, super, super cool. So I'm pretty happy so far. I still need to, do more and finish the hat, but I am very pleased with how it's turning out. Okay, update on the colorwork hat. I have completed the colorwork portion and snipped off the white yarn, and now I just need to actually finish the hat. I have a feeling this is going to be more of a kid-size hat just due to the yarn I'm using. Okay, update on the hat. I finished the colorwork hat. It is tiny, but I also expected this to be tiny because I used smaller than prescribed yarn, yada yada, right? So funny thing is that I was relooking at all the patterns in here and I realized that I'm actually illiterate because each of the patterns actually does say what weight yarn to use. And one, there is no place for DK weight yarn in this. So, I mean, I'm not surprised that it came out tiny. That, that's whatever. But there actually are a lot of patterns for both worsted weight yarn and bulky weight yarn. I just can't read. So did I kind of make this DK weight yarn hat for nothing? Maybe, but you know what? I have a hat and this is basically a child's hat. It's still really cool, and you can see my mistake on some parts of the magic loop where I messed up a little bit, but I think it turned out pretty good, especially since this is my second ever knit colorwork piece in general. I actually can't tell if I either am a tight knitter, especially in essentially stockinette stitch, or if maybe it's just a fact that I've been using the wrong needle or the wrong yarn for all of the patterns that I've been trying out in this book. But I am determined to at least make one hat using the prescribed yarn and needles, okay? It's going to happen, I swear to it, and now that I realize there's actually quite a few worsted weight patterns, I can use worsted weight yarn. So the next hat I am eyeing is this blossom hat. It's pretty. I could potentially use some of the big twist yarns that I got off of, not on clearance, but I kind of impulse bought because Joann's was closing. So I think that would be a really good use for that. So let me pull out the yarns I'm considering. The thing is, I really want to use this blue color as like a contrast color, but it doesn't quite go with any of these colors that I have. Like it could, but I don't know if it's ideal. Cause like, I feel like it'd go best with this color, but this is kind of thinner. So I'm thinking the twisty yarn might be better. I think there's some potential, right? You know, like it's not bad. I don't think it's good, but it's not bad. I feel like a green would be better, but I want to use this blue. I think I'm gonna have to phone a friend on the color choices. You know, it's kind of amazing how actually following the prescribed yarn and the prescribed needles will actually give you the results you need, because now I'm actually able to knit in the round not using magic loop, and this is essentially the width diameter of hat that it's supposed to be, which is essentially wanted in the first place. But now, according to the pattern, you use size 7 knitting needles to make the ribbing, and then you switch up to size 9 knitting needles to actually do the color work. I'm using 8s, so it's probably a little larger, but I'm going to switch these to 9s right now. And now I can knit. And now I do 1 round of just knit before I do the color work. So let's do that. And I think that's probably why they wanted me to switch to bigger needles, because I think the knitting portion makes it a lot smaller. Using only 1 stitch instead of a back and forth stitch makes it a lot tighter than the rib knit. I went ahead and started on the color work for the next piece, and let me show you the progress. It turned out so good. I really like it. I ended up finishing the color work, and now I just have to knit the remaining length of the hat before I bind off for the crown. Using the correct weight yarn and the correct needles is just chef's kiss, magical. I love it. I'm here for it. And because I actually feel like I'm doing something right for once, which I guess is kind of what I should have been doing the entire time, but whatever. It's here, whatever, right? But this pattern turned out so pretty. I am so happy with it. It's just really cool. And I think I finally figured out how to do the floats properly. And honestly, just making this hat, I feel like I have a lot more confidence in knitted color work than I did in previous hats. And also, just actually having the right length cord for the circular needles and doing it in the round makes this process so much easier than when I was doing magic loop. Because I think with magic loop, I was twisting these needles, it was awful, but this is just so much easier. So I'm really glad that I stuck through and just worked on this hat. So I'm gonna finish it right now, and I will get back to you once I actually finish it. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna weave in some of these ends before I finish this, so that way, when I do finish it, I will not hate myself. Okay, that's better. And I finished my hat. This is the last one of the 3 I wanted to do. So let me show you all 3 of the hats that I made. This super small one, another small one, and a pretty large one. But I'm going to conclude my video here. I would say overall the book is a pretty good intro to colorwork knitting. As someone who has never done any form of colorwork knitting ever, I was able to pick it up pretty quickly and I was able to make some really cool things. Obviously, I still have a long ways to go when it comes to knitting, like figuring out my tension and all that, but I think I was able to understand or kind of pick up some of the tips and tricks at least. For example, for this one, it has you, there's gonna be like, there are large gaps in between like some of the color work. So I learned to have a long tail and then pick up that tail in the next row over. So that was very interesting. So you can see the inside is like this. It was definitely a lot easier using circular needles versus magic loop. And maybe this is a sign that I need to pick up some additional circular knitting needle sizes. But on the other hand, I learned how to do magic loop. So it's kind of a win-win because I learned something new and I got some really cool hats out of it. So overall, I think it's a success. I still do think some of the patterns in there are kind of biased towards bulky weight yarn. And just because I don't have bulky weight yarn, it was kind of annoying to see something I liked and then not be able to do it because I don't have the yarn for it. And I didn't want to buy yarn for it. So that's my only complaint, but that's kind of like a whatever if you have bulky weight yarn on hand. But overall, it's a good book. Again, I bought this at Joann's and one of their liquidation sales, but I'm sure you can order this book online if you are interested. There are a lot of really cool patterns, and you can definitely experiment with different yarns and colors and, you know, make something cool out of it. So with that being said, I will end my video here. Thank you for watching if you made it this far, and see you next time. Bye!